All right, so IMDA, there may be people here that don't know IMDA, because we have a lot of international people here. So give me the quick, what is IMDA?
Okay, IMDA essentially is tech and media. And years ago, won't bore you with the details, but two statutory boards in Singapore came together, and because of the intersection of tech and media, so IMDA covers kind of three large kind of outcomes, right? One is the economic outcomes, the other one, social. It's really making sure that Singaporeans know tech and digital and not left behind. And the last one is we also have a regulatory hat, and it takes place in basically the two verticals of tech and media.
Tech and media, yeah, and so you're part of the government supporting the tech and the media space.
Absolutely.
We love that. Thank you so much for all of your support here, everyone. Thank you. So why is it so important for IMDA? You know, you've got tech, you've got media, but why are creators important?
Well, you know, we take care of the media sector, right? And the media sector spans everything from what we call maybe more traditional media, film and TV, but also creators and games. And the reason why we think creators are super important is because, like everybody else in the media sector, our creators are storytellers. And every country needs their storytellers, in particular for Singapore, because Singapore is such a diverse country. We truly believe in the fundamentals of things like multiculturalism, you know, communities coming together, and the best people to tell Singapore stories are your storytellers from Singapore, right? So and the creators are just basically telling stories in a different way and form. You're telling stories through what we maybe call shorter form content versus your longer form content like film and TV. But having your own storytellers tell your own stories to Singapore and to the world is super important for us.
Yeah, you know, it's fascinating to me that in many ways, like if you're working with traditional media, you maybe have 100, a couple, you know, maybe 200 people in front of the camera, on the mic, on the radio, in the newspaper, maybe it's 500. But I did a little bit of research and found that there were 50,000 creators in Singapore, and that's like stories at scale, right? I mean, think about the stories that are being told from so many different directions. I think it's fascinating. So what are you guys doing to enable, support, and position Singapore as a place where creators can come and tell those stories and feel like they're welcomed and part of it, and really get their own unique perspectives of Singapore out to the world?
Yeah, you know, when you told me about the statistics of 50,000 creators in Singapore, I was like, really?
Yeah, right.
Like, okay, so like we ourselves didn't really even know that, right? So because creators are so important, and the audience these days are fragmenting, you know, they have so many different channels to watch content. I think it's important to make sure that creators feel like they can continue to create stories and kind of make a living. So the things we've done with creators kind of revolve around these two areas. How do you make good content? Mm-hmm. And then how do you perhaps think about how you monetize it? Because I think most creators today in Singapore aren't doing this full time. So to help them make that leap to do it full time, then they must be able to monetize the content. What we've done over the last few years are a couple of pilots here and there. We've been testing the market. We've been testing to see how do we help them up their quality. And we've worked with partners. We've worked with partners like Closet. They've kind of worked with a couple of fitness personalities and content creators to develop their own voice and personality, and maybe extend fitness into an adjacent, what I call industry, right? So we've done that, and that's around how do we up quality. We look at monetization. We work with Kobe. We see how we can help them partner with the brands, with the creators, so that the monetization happens with branded content. We've also worked with you and with Jasper and other events, creator events, because we also think that it's important for creators to be able to talk to other creators. Yeah. And when you talk to other creators, when you interact with people, different perspectives emerge. And with those different perspectives, that's where the creators have good content and find, I suppose, a cross-pollination of, you know, creator. I mean,
they support each other, they collaborate together, all that stuff.
And it's hard because Singaporeans sometimes tend to be really reserved, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know you said Singaporeans are really friendly, but actually we find that it's hard to get people to know people, yeah, and to approach somebody offline, right? So these events are super important for our creators.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting to see all the different things happening. We had a friend of mine here on stage yesterday, Ivan Jelkovic, who's building basically like Soho House meets podcast studios. Wow. Where anybody can go out and just jump in for $150, record a podcast, and walk away with something really good that they can post. It's what he said, and I love this term, I'm going to keep on using it. Gautam, who was also on the panel, who's building a network of podcasters around the world, but said it gets rid of podcrastination, where everyone wants to do a podcast, but you're like, I've got a podcast in me, I'm gonna get it out there. So I love that you're supporting that and helping to really build this place as a hub for creators, and love seeing like that happen. So talk a little about, and you mentioned this term before, but inclusivity and diversity. How is that important when you think about your creator efforts? Because one of the things I love coming to Singapore is just the diversity of cultures and people and food and everything else. So how do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, Singapore's so multi-dimensional, right? And I think creators here are also similarly multi-dimensional. They want to find their voice, they want to find what's authentic to them, and it's across all types of genres, all types of topics. What we've done, again, a bit like a pilot, is we've been working with a couple of channels and content creators to develop their own, I suppose, focus areas. And some of these focus areas are on some of the things that you spoke about, diversity and inclusion, right? It could be something on maybe social values in Singapore, or spotlighting the different cultural traditions, right? Or even about food, which everybody knows, travel, basically working with them so that we kind of showcase the entire diversity of what Singapore has to offer, and more importantly, what that means as a character of Singapore. And by doing that, we are also helping creators kind of develop the ability to tell stories that perhaps are a little bit more difficult to tackle or a little bit more sensitive, and we're giving them this platform and a chance to talk. So it's access to this topic so that they are able to then talk about it in a more sensitive and inclusive way.
Yeah, I think it's really important. We had Jamie Lim on stage here yesterday in one of our creator spotlights. Local creator, had left her full-time job, now is a year and a half into this journey of trying to be a full-time creator, and she was very upfront about the challenges and the things that she's going through and how she's on a plan. But I love that you guys are there to support creators like that. I think it's really important. What are some of the things that, specifically, you talked a little bit about it, but helping them to grow, helping them to upskill, helping them to think about what are some of those things that will help me develop? Maybe I'm not going to be a full-time creator for my whole life, but will help me upskill in general so I can take the skills I learned as a creator and maybe use that in other ways.
Yeah, it's essentially being a creator is someone who's creative, right? At the bottom line of it. And this skill of creativity and storytelling can be used in many, many, many other settings, even in more commercial jobs, as we call it. Even in the traditional film and TV world, a lot of our filmmakers don't make all their money from film and TV. Sometimes they work for advertising jobs, right? Sometimes they work for people to tell brand stories. But the fundamental skills of storytelling, the fundamental skills of being able to approach something with a point of view, and being able to communicate in a way that audiences can engage with and you have resonance, I think that's really the skill of what creators bring, and that's valuable in many, many different settings, in many different opportunities. So if we continue to help creators do that, I think it sets them up for doing other things in life as well. And even if they don't want to create anymore in future, they bring that with them to whatever they go next.
Well, yeah, and it's fascinating. We see this, and I see this around the world, whereas you're a creator, but there are skills that you get from creating that you can use in other ways. Like, you know what, you're a great creator, but you're probably a really good editor. So maybe you create for yourself, but you're an editor for somebody else. Or maybe you just got really good at running a creator company, and you can come in and be a COO and help other creators. We had just, keep on talking about what we've been talking about here, but Sherry Wong was here talking about Roster, which is where people can look for jobs as a creator and put there, like, I worked on Jamie Lim's thing, I worked on Ming Wei's thing, I worked on Super Cat Kai's thing as an editor, and then use that as credibility to do other things there, which I find fascinating. Or, even Melissa Laurie, who's going on at 10 o'clock upstairs, who's running a UGC agency where she's helping creators become videographers and video creators for brands, not for their channels. So all of those things tie into this really healthy ecosystem, and I love that you guys are pulling that together. Think about the future, though. Think about what it's going to look like in a few years for Singapore from a creator perspective. What's sort of your vision, and then we can talk some of the different pieces there.
Yeah, I think all of us feel really strongly for this community. Creators have a very unique ability to reach out to a wide spectrum of age groups, demographics, and they have their own communities. So to me, the vision for the future is that we have strong creators, everybody who have ability to find their voice, but more importantly, they then grow their own community. And this community is a loyal one. It's one that supports them through their career, and they continue to create stories about Singapore that can travel overseas or even within Singapore, reach out and really bind Singaporeans together into a Singapore identity. Because a lot of it, and you might heard, we often debate what is the Singapore identity, right? And we said, this is a really hard one. It changes all the time. And I think it will always be defined by the generation of Singaporeans who are here. And who better to bring that to life than our creators, our own storytellers, to be able to kind of make it really tangible what being Singaporean is like. And no one else can do it better than our own creators, which is why for us that's also super important, that we build the capabilities for our Singaporeans who can be storytellers, can be creators, and in the next few years continue to build that and to grow a big following and kind of be that glue that binds the society, right? I know it's a very lofty dream, but I really think our creators can do that.
Yeah, and I think that's very forward-thinking of you. I was talking again with David from TikTok here yesterday, and we were talking, he was at P&G, and now he's at TikTok working with big brands, trying to help them unlock TikTok as a way to grow. And it's so hard for them to give up what they think the brand is and let creators come in and do it. And the same thing with Singapore, where you might have a vision of what you think that Singapore is, but it's that, storytellers at scale who are really telling it and crafting it and getting it out there. Because, in the end, if I'm sitting there in San Francisco or if I'm sitting there in London, I'm not looking at what you have to say about Singapore. I'm looking at that person who's telling me about where to go eat. I want their stories about the best hawker stalls and things like that. So
you're not about to trust the authority to tell you what's good, right? You will look at the people who have done it on the ground, you've experienced it yourself, and say, hey, you endorse it? I'm going to try that.
Exactly.
In Old Airport Road that you mentioned. Exactly.
So, let's get to some of the more concrete stuff. What about financial support? Do you offer financial support to creators at some level?
At some level, primarily, a lot of what we do is helping you fish. Mm-hmm. Right? We will not give you the fish, meaning right. That we'll. Well,
they might be old and stinky, so that's good.
Yeah. No, I mean, if it's sitting out there for a long time, it's going to be smelly. But our support financially goes towards more building capabilities, because I think that's, again, the bedrock of how do you be a good storyteller. So that's one. And two, we also support the development of good stories. So those are kind of the two areas that we do support creators. And we may also work through intermediaries. So for example, we partner with MediaCorp, and I think Angie spoke.
Oh, Angie was here.
Right?
Yeah, we had a great conversation yesterday. It was awesome.
Yeah,
really, they're very impressive, by the way. Very impressive.
Very good. I'm glad to know that. Because they are also very forward-looking, and they want to grow the next generation of storytellers. So we may work through intermediaries like them, or we can work directly with some creators, but always towards more helping them fish rather than give them the fish.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, there's a lot going on as the creator world changes through technology. I mean, it's great that you're involved in technology and media, because the two are sort of inextricably bound, even more so with AI. And we're talking a lot here on stage about the intersection of AI and creators and the creator economy and music. How important is that innovation thread when you think about what you do to help support creators?
I think innovation is always true bedrock. It's a bedrock of what we do as Singapore in general. But specifically for creators, I think innovation can take the form in many different forms. And maybe the first one is what kind of innovation do you have in the content, the way you tell the story, right? And you need kind of innovation there because our audiences have a rather short attention span.
We all do.
Yeah, apparently.
Thank you, social media.
Yeah, thank you, social media. And apparently it's shorter than a goldfish now, which is...
I know, isn't that wild? I don't know if I buy that, but yeah.
Yeah, but
it's a good headline.
That's apparently. So with the short attention span, I think the innovation in terms of how you tell a story, the content that's being put across will constantly innovate. So that's one. Two is how do you use innovation to make it easier to tell the story, more productive, if you will, more efficient, with less cost. So that could be using AI to maybe shortcut certain, or give you a leg up on the starting part of your script, or maybe helping you think through how the storyboard might look like. I think tech and AI and innovation could really help in these two areas, content and how do you make the content.
Absolutely, it's your co-pilot. We've talked a lot about that. We won't get too much more into that. Okay, so we have a minute left. Real quickly, I have two more questions for you. One is, what would you say to creators and creator-led businesses to tell them about why they should do it in Singapore. Why should they be here? Give us the quick pitch of like why Singapore for a creator or a creator-led business.
Well, Singapore has been the center stage and has been pretty much a hub for a lot of different industries, which means that if you're here in Singapore, you get the opportunity to touch many, many different things. And it's almost like, you go to one place and it's like a supermarket. You get kind of everything in one place. I think we can play that role. We can play the role of bringing people together, congregate here in Singapore, exchange ideas, and that's what Singapore does best.
Yeah, that's great. I couldn't agree with that more. Singapore's an amazing place. Okay, last question for you. Who's an under-the-radar creator that you've been following that we all should know about?
Do you really want me to say this?
I do. Who do you like? Okay, I know all of your children are beautiful, but who's someone you've just been watching recently?
I've been really looking at many different fitness creators, and I haven't been following anyone specifically because, well, the algo is so good these days, right?
Yeah, right. It keeps on feeding it to you.
It keeps feeding me, right? And after a while, all the creators are putting out such amazing stuff, and I'm just hooked to watch more and more. To be honest, haven't been really following a particular one, but I've been following the algo. All the fitness stuff has been great.
Follow that hashtag, right?
Follow the hashtag.
Follow the hashtag.
I get what I want.
All right. Well, if you're a fitness creator, make sure you come up and talk to Jean because maybe she'll be your next big fan. Jean Ng, thank you very much.